Oh,
In Venice, a city all too familiar, and the high water level flood definitions were put on the test. The iconic most barriers designed to protect the crisis from the rising test were activities sheltered the Venice from significant damage. However, other areas of the region were not so fortunate. Many towns and villages in the Veneto region saw extensive flooding with the residents forced to higher ground. The Italian government has declared a state of emergency in several regions, mobilizing rescue workers to deploy to army to assist in evacuation force. Civil Protection Authority have urged people to affected areas to remain cautious to official warning as more rain forecast in the coming days. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visited in the affected areas, expressing her solidarity with the victims and pledging government support to reconfuse the force. This is national emergency, and we are working closely to local authority to ensure the safety for all residents, she said. Climate experts that such extreme weather events could become more frequent due to climate change. Italy, with a varied geography, particularly vulnerable to affected changing weather patterns. The combination of heavy rainfall, poor mountain infrastructure, and urban expansion into flood-prone areas has exacerbated the impact of recent storms. Its depths disappeared under murky water. Rural Sicily was not spared entire. The contrast of the tempest of olive groves and vineyards were ravaged. The castles of Sicily, rich agricultural heritage, which helpfully to their fields were submerged, their livelihoods momentarily wiped out the storm war. The damage of the agriculture sector is cornerstone of the Sicily economy is yet to be fully equipped, but early estimates suggest a significant impact. The storm has also rekindled discussions about the climate change and the increasingly visible impact. Scientists point to rising temperature in the Mediterranean in contrast of more frequent and intense weather patterns. This storm in Sicily is not an isolated incident but horrible to changing climate in respect not geographical barriers. Amidst the chaos have been hearing displays of resilience and solidarity. Communities have together to support avoided evacuation support to provide shelters to those displaced. Sicily Civil Protection Chief Fabio Crusoe warning of the increasingly unstable Mediterranean climate economy, warning from climatologists who said that the sea surface temperature now about 27 Celsius are contributed to the formation of more tropical cyclones now at the Mediterranean. Local measures including Roberto Lagola of Palermo and Etnico Tragico of Catania have requested emergency funds of support from the national government. Cleanup efforts are ongoing with more than 1,400 civil protection volunteers and firefighters involved in the cleanup debris and draining flooded areas. Environmental groups such as Ligibird and Colson Italy in the speed up infrastructure urged, especially in the southern cities prone on flooding. Experts from the University of the Palermo know that 16% of region drainage system and outdated or inundated from the today extreme weather conditions. As Sicily begin in a powerful recovery, the message is clear. Climate disasters are no longer a distant possibility. They are not happening now with the devastating consequences. public transportation was severely disrupted, leaving passengers stranded. The coastal area passed to boost with a storm and strong sway, crashing against the coastline, causing erosions to damage the sea definies. Emergency services are working around the clock to help those in need. The Italian Red Cross has mobilized a team to support the most affected areas, offering shelters and distributing basic necessities. Refuse operations are ongoing, with the reports of people trapped in the pool due to rising water. Helicopters have been deployed to evacuate those to imminent danger. The impact of the storm on agriculture is also a growing concern. Sicily knows the serious growth of vineyard forces potential devastation. Initial estimates suggest significant crop losses, with a could have the long-term economic impact of the region farming communities. Italian Prime Minister Conte has experienced solidarity with the affected residents, pledging government aid to resources to support recovery efforts. He praised the resilience of the Sicilian people and terrorist forced rescues. Meteorologists predict severe weather conditions will continue over the next 24 hours and advise residents to remain vigilant. As Sicily struggles with the aftermath and the disaster of focus to ensure the safety of the residents is beginning to arduous task to rebuilding. The full extent of the damage will become clear in the coming days, but for now Sicily is widespread the storm relentless onslaught. After the storm, Sicily emergency service remained overwhelmed. Over 315 emergency calls were recorded in 24 hours, and fire crews were sent to Cerrete, Ragusa, and Argento to clear fallen trees, restore power lines, and evacuate flooded buildings. Farmers in the rural area report catastrophic losses. Vineyard, olive grapes, and retail, and citrus orange, where other vital civil economy were flooded. This storm destroyed a 12-year war. St. Antonio Rizal, the farmer near Trapani, were in despair. The island's fragile infrastructure suffered serious damage in the southern parts of the island. Bridge in the rural roads collapsing, cutting off Smile Mountains town. In Enna, several landslides blocked all access roads, forcing helicopters to deliver supplies. Rescue teams, including the military, have been deployed to assist with the worst-hit areas. Civil defenders until have set up temporary shelters in schools and community centers of displaced families, many of whom have lost everything. Environmental experts warn that such intense storms are becoming more frequent due to climate change. This is not the first time Sicily was faced with the wrath of nature, but experts are calling this storm one of the most destructive weather events in decades. The last such disaster occurred in 2029, where deadly floods and landslides killed 37 people in Messina, but this time the combination of heavy rainfall, wind and widespread infrastructure damage made the consequences even more serious. According to preliminary government report, more than 1,200 homes were damaged, 14 roads remain closed, and 7 bridges have been structure damage. Insurance companies are already inundated with the claims of many families without insurance to continue on compensation from the state. This storm was particularly dangerous because it suddens. Meteorologists issue a yellow alert just hours before the first downpour. By that time, it was too late many communities to prepare. Critics are now to call into fast weather warning system to better preparedness of natural disaster, especially in the southern region, which is often overlooking. Satellite images show in a grim picture. As Sicily slowly begins to dry up, the real lesson of the storm is being recovered not only in blizzards but also in dialect and the growing average in the Mediterranean Sea. One of the candle ice calm sea is sunny skies is becoming of the epicenter of the climate disaster. Experts call this a turning point to the urge Southern European government is invest in the climate resilience. Coastal cities such as Palermo and Catania, densely populated, are rich in culture heritage, particularly vulnerable to rising sea levels, increasing rainfall to heat waves. The Mediterranean Sea is warming 20% faster than the global average, said Dr. Elena Morandi, the climate researcher of University of Rome. This storm was not a fluke. This is part of the trend we are seeing more intense, more frequent, more destructive. International observers from UNESCO have experienced concerns about Sicily historical monuments, many of which were flooded or damaged during this storm. The Brockwhite tributaries of Noto and ancient Greek ruins are still nude, and many parts of the parts surrounding Mount Etna were affected. In dramatic turn of events, Sicily finds itself endorsed in unprecedented storm as nature unleashed at any period upon the picturesque Italian island, where burst of the exclusive coverage and mythological spectacle deletion the impact of communities, infrastructure and the environment. As the storm approached Sicily, among the clouds gathering killing the tempest to unparalleled proportions, coastal area forced to onslaught the fierce winds and torrential rains, leading the widespread flooding in challenging conditions to both residents to emergency service. Our on-the-ground reported paint a vivid picture to havoc wreaked by the storm. The city of Palermo was transformed into rivers and water levels served submerged cars and tested to resilience to flooded enemies. The historic architecture stood the test time to the basis of relators onslaught the windy parade. Throughout the island communities are grappling with the power outage, and the storm force causes significant damage to electrical infrastructure. Emergency shelters have been opened to provide refuge to those displaced by the storm.
Zatrzymaj się całkowicie. Niech to przejdzie sobie. Zostaw.
Gesù mio.
A powerful storm hit Sicily, plunging part of the Italian island into chaos as torrential rain, strong winds and flash floods swept through the gray skies, including Palermo, Catania and Messina. According to Italy's Civil Protection Department, the storm dumped more than 120 mm of rain in just a few hours, nearly a month's worth, flooding streets, collapsing roads and prompted dozens of evacuations. Emergency service responded more than 300 calls using helicopters to board the rescue trapped residents. In Palermo, dramatic footage showed cars flooding like toys and shops in the historic center of flooding. Giulia Romana, a 42-year-old local resident, said, "It was terrible. The water rushed into our house in a matter of minutes. The barrier had time to move the upper floor. Schools were closing in affected regions, and hundreds of people were left without power due to power outage." Authority also reported temporarily closed to Catania Airport. The rail runway were flooded, caused delays and cancellations. Meteorologists explained the extreme weather conditions as a mitigant to rare Mediterranean hurricane formed by high sea temperature and unstable air masses. In the heart of the Mediterranean, the Italian island of Sicily has long been seasonally with a sun of detending coastline and seductive blend of the history and culture. However, this idyllic landscape is recently has been transformed in dramatic scene of nature fury. A formidable storm marked by resilient rain and fierce winds and lashed Sicily, unveiling the vulnerable of even the most picturesque of the region with the forms of weather. The storm onslaught was a shift where the meteorologists barely able to predict and intensify before before they unleashed food and made the ape of fury. Within hours, streets and town crises across the Sicily were inundated, transformed urban center into unwelcoming, water-loaded mazes. The rain, increasing unforgiving, pointed the green portrait of the region undecided by the elements. In Palermo, the Sicilian capital, scenes and the chaos unfolded. As scene streets and usually burst with the life and aroma of Sicily, crash while deserted save of ascensional vehicles struggling against the rising water. The iconic Tragedie, a testament of Sicily agriculture, dangerous stood with the silence within to unflooding calamity. A severe storm hit Sicily, Italy, caused heavy rain, strong winds and widespread flooding in several cities including Palermo and Catania. The extreme weather events, which struck without warning, turned streets into rivers, disrupted transportation and left thousands of residents without electricity and with damaged property. Local authority issued several weather warnings on the island who received rainfall significantly above the seasonal average. Videos show a dramatic scene where, posted on social media, cars submerged into water, people waist deep water in the flood waters, and emergency service trying to reach stranded cities. Meteorologists reported that the storm deployed rapidly over the Mediterranean Sea under the influence of low pressure system combined into high sea surface temperature, and a phenomenon that is becoming increasingly common due to climate change. Italy is grappling with a severe flooding after days of relentless rain, particularly affected with the northern regions of the country. Torrential downpour have caused rivers to swell, burst their banks and inundate towns and villages. This latest episode of flooding has left authorities struggling to cope with the growing crisis, with thousands of people evacuated from their homes. The region of Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy and Veneto have been among the hardest hit. In Emilia-Romagna, widespread damage to infrastructure have been reported, with the roads submerged, bridges washed away and homes flooded. Several rivers, including the Po, the Anguil, have reached critical levels, forced emergency service to respond rapidly to prevent further damage. The situation has been compounded by landslides and hilly areas, blocked roads and isolated communities. In Venice, the city is too familiar to high water levels. Flood definitions that put the test. The iconic most barriers designed to protect the city with the rising tides were activated shelters to mitigate the Venice from the significant damage. However, other areas in the region were not so fortunate. Many towns and villages in Veneto region saw extensive flooding, with the residents forced to fare the high ground. The human toll of storm is still being aced. At least 3 deaths have been confirmed so far, including the elderly man who drowned in flooding basement in Messina and young delivery driver who was swept away by flood waters in Catania. Dozens of people have been injured, many of them due to falling debris and traffic incidents on the road middle-sized pillar or rain. Sicilian Governor Renata Sicily visited the flooded areas on Tuesday, calling that the damaged helicopters and promising long-term support will not abandon ill people. The recovery will be with incomplete, we promised during the press conference. Local volunteers are evacuated, erased, diverted fluid and helping to clear debris. Social media is now filled not only image and destructive but also of solidarity. Neighbors stretch offering shoulders and young groups organized donated drivers. School in several provinces remain closed to damage assessment continue. Psychologists have been sent to provide assistance to children and families affected by trauma, especially in the hardest hit community of Gela and Lixita.